This is Nicole from the Mosaic family of companies. Today I'm talking to Brad Schroeder, who has been in engineered oil country engineering since 2011. Brad, how's it going today?
Good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Can you briefly tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what you do at oil country?
Yeah, like you said, I'm an engineer here in mechanical. Most of my time at oil country is done designing equipment, oil field, and otherwise.
Perfect. And what are you going to talk to us about today?
Today I'm talking to you about something else that fills my time, which is handling our knowledge transfer system at oil country.
Okay, I'll leave you to it.
So this presentation is going to show a little bit about the history of knowledge transfer at oil country, what that really means, and some of the pitfalls we've had along the way and some of the things we're working on now. So typical knowledge systems don't exist. Best case is that there's some rule of thumb verbal communication given from an employer. You want to know the answer to a question, you kind of ask the guy who knows and he tells you. Worst case is something people call theory X management, or essentially you do what I tell you to, you don't know unless I tell you. So both the second fairly negative and not really conducive to knowledge for an organization. So why did oil country start a knowledge transfer system? Well, when I started, along with a few others, there's many of us who were relatively new to the company as well as to the industry and naturally have a lot of questions to do our job. And we got the answers of those questions from typically one or two people in our organization who kind of had that industry knowledge. And that worked out okay, but there is bottleneck resource, or having to go through one person for kind of simple tasks or simple information that just seemed like it should be at our fingertips a lot more easily. So we had the idea, how can we get this information out of this person's head, for example, and into a book, into a system, into something where you're not answering the same question all the time to different people. So we started thinking about that, and we pulled out information from the people who had the experience in the industry, as well as information on technical codes and specifications and products that were typical questions is kind of what we focused on. And we recorded those and we started putting them onto the computer. This led into what developed into Oil Country's OneNote database. So we were using the software OneNote to capture all of this information. There's a few reasons we went with that. We wanted something that was really easy to search, really easy to add, and really not cumbersome in any way. And trying out a few different softwares, we went with OneNote and have been using it since. So that is something that I led the effort on, that and organizing it and creating the system and how it would work and how people would access it and how it would work on everyone's computers and so forth. So now I'll kind of explain a little bit about what that looked like for us. So we started with the structure that you see here, where we had a few different OneNote database folders, and inside of each we could then kind of start sorting some of this information. So we started with the basic one, the library folder. This was specifications, so for us a lot of API specifications, AISC, so different PDF documents would live in there. And the benefit of putting them inside of here instead of a typical Windows structure like we had was that you could search within all of them, every word within every PDF document at the same time. So if you don't know what you don't know and you're looking for a specification, if you type it inside of OneNote, it's searching inside of all the specifications that we have at the same time. So you don't have to kind of wonder, well, if I'm looking up properties on wire rope for steel design, is there a specification on that or not? If you don't know, you type it in and turns out, yeah, fair enough, there actually is one. So it was a real benefit that way. We also split it up into component design. So if you're designing a specific item, a follower S system, a skid-based design, there's some typical do's and don'ts of that if you've done it before, but if you haven't, you don't know. And so we had that that folder for all of those component designs. Then we had another one where we said, okay, well, what about if you're doing some more general design? I want to know about what's welding common practices. What about using bolts and torque specs? And what about sort of more general applicable knowledge? So we had our general design and analysis. So engineering information that's applicable to multiple designs. And then our fourth one we had at the beginning was our oil field KT, general information on the oil field that you might not know if you're just out of school or new to the industry. So processes our customers have, a lot of information about, definitions of different words, so you can kind of look that up yourself. So that's where that started, and here are a few pages that we created, just some examples of what this might look like. So this page here is how to work within one software to another, so SAFI to ANSYS to do some force reaction validation. So it's a process that typically someone would explain over the shoulder to another engineer, and then 2 months later you'd hear them explaining again to a different engineer. So rather than have that happen multiple times, let's document this, let's explain how it is, and now they can look that up. Here's a page on how to straighten a mast that was bent. So this is a trip that I went on down to Colombia, and as I was doing it, I was taking notes on all the do's and don'ts of how to do this, and then made a page on it. And since then we have done that again, and that's been something that we've referred back to, complete with common pitfalls and things to avoid. Another section on some software, Inventor and AutoCAD, back and forth. Some more analysis here. This page is on buckling and SAFI, so very important to do buckling analysis checks and how to do those, making sure we get those right and consistent. This page here is what's called a crown out, and if you've never heard of what that is, well, you type it into our database and it tells you why that might happen, what the effects of it are, if you go to see one of these, what you want to look for, what questions to ask, what to do following up. And so this kind of goes on, non-destructive testing. We had people come in and present, and we documented all of that and put it in there. And again, the list goes on, so to speak. So those are 8 pages of examples. Currently, we have over 300 pages, so that kind of gives an idea of how that's taken off and grown over the years. But what happened as we went forward is we realized not everybody learns necessarily from just reading from a computer screen. There's that you need to experience it and do it yourself to learn it or have that conversation. And so to kind of supplement there, we started what we called our oil country colleges. So this was something that we did once a week and still do, where there'd be a list of topics that people would put up and say, hey, it'd be great if someone would present on, that last inspection they went on or that last repair procedure, like what did you find, what happened, to have that formal conversation rather than just a page to read later. And so this is something that we started doing, and we've had great success with this, with over 100 different lectures on typically technical topics. So then taking it further, we said, okay, well, that's great. So we've got our OneNote database system that we can look up kind of information that can be codified. We've got the lectures that we can go back and forth on kind of in a group setting. But what about mistakes that we keep making? So, this isn't enough on its own. So where to take it from there? So what we did from there is we started our engineering and designers roundtable. So what that is for us is typically a month. Every month we'll have a meeting where our group of engineers, as well as our group of designers and drafters, will get together and they'll discuss kind of the issues of the month, the mistakes that we've made, that we've tracked, and how we can work on those, if there's specific actions that people need to take, and just share that knowledge in a casual setting, but also in a kind of working group setting where we then take away action items. Okay, do we need to standardize a process? How did this error happen? How can we be better next time? So that's kind of the history of knowledge transfer, and where we're at today is that our rate of change, so our rate of growth of new projects, exceeds our rate of training. So we constantly have people learning new topics and new ideas and new challenges, yet that is going at a faster rate than our training can keep up. So our plan to battle this is what we're calling our competency training program, which is still kind of in its infancy, but the idea being that this is going to accelerate our rate of training to catch up with our rate of change, or at least track very closely with it. There's a lot of different ways that can look, and that's a challenge that we're facing right now, and everyone learns differently, and how to do that from a mentorship perspective to formal training to in-field. There's a lot of different challenges that we're going to face on that yet, but that's a battle we're willing to take on. So in terms of our customer, something that we would say that this does for them, why do they care? Why does this matter? Something that we've had in the past is that a customer may want to speak to one particular employee because of a relationship, and that's understandable, but sometimes they want to talk to a particular employee because they feel that that's the only employee that has that knowledge. And that can be the case. You can only avoid that so much, but our goal here is to raise everyone's level of knowledge so that it's not in the head of one, it's in the head of the group. And we've seen that happen, at least to some extent. Something else that we use to explain it is the concept of knowledge as a T. So the top of the T being the breadth and the vertical portion being the depth. So if this is any one person's knowledge, our employees have different breadths and depths of knowledge. Some employees are very deep in one particular topic, but narrow in their breadth, whereas others kind of know a little bit about everything, but don't go so deep into one. When you combine all these and you share that information as an organization, the benefit is that you get an organization that kind of has breadth and depth to it. You're not just getting a technical expert in one aspect, but you're getting multiple experts. You're getting a breadth of information, and that's been huge for us in tackling new projects and sharing information going forward. So that kind of summarizes our, a quick view on our knowledge transfer system and some of the battles we've had with it. I could talk lots more about it, but that gives you a little overview.
Thanks, Brad. That's really informative. So what I heard you say is in Oil Country's knowledge transfer system, there's sort of 4 components. The first being we have a OneNote database. Number 2, we give lectures on technical topics in the form of Oil Country colleges. We have engineering and designer roundtables. And the 4th component is a competency training program. If another engineering firm were to undergo building their own knowledge transfer system, what kind of advice would you give them? Where should they start?
Well, what worked with us was trying to identify some of the low-hanging fruit and get engagement. It's easy to see something like this and to say, hey, that looks great, let's copy that, and that can be done. But the biggest challenge for us at the start was getting buy-in, particularly from the people that have the knowledge in their heads, usually the people who are the busiest. And so we kind of really explained the issue and how that this is going to free up time for them and be better for them. And once we had the people with the information, kind of the people who have been here longer buying in, that's when it just kind of took off. Because the younger employees, they're going to be behind it. They're the ones who need that knowledge to do their job. So getting buy-in is probably the biggest challenge we had at the start. And then once we did start, I would say start with some low-hanging fruit on kind of the simple questions and go from there.
That's really great. Any other thoughts that you want to share on KT?
Oh man, it's been an interesting journey with that. Looking forward to lots more. As much as these systems are great, you can't really beat the learning from doing. But when we do learn from doing and we do make mistakes, we try very hard to document those and to talk about them as a group and not view them as being something super negative, but something we can learn from. So if you have that kind of culture to back it, then you can go pretty far with this.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks.